I'll ask anybody's question but yours. You're an idiot. And really a disloyal person.
In what has become a rather interesting and reoccurring segment on this podcast this season, Andy has rediscovered the joys of water.
It's an important thing, something that I should remember more often in my life. But alas, this is the end of the year. We all make resolutions that we inevitably won't follow in 2025. And mine is always to drink more water.
Well, welcome everyone.
As the resident old guy, you will learn this more and more, Andy.
Welcome everyone to the Disloyal Idiots Podcast. It's the end of 2024, only a couple of days away until we ring in 2025. I'm Christian de Guzman, joined by Andy Pregler and Steve Howler here on the Fans First Sports Network. And fittingly enough, Syracuse football capped off 2024 with a victory in the Holiday Bowl, 52-35 over the Husk that is Washington State.
They weren't so much of a Husk.
Not too much.
It was definitely less of a Husk than we were wont to believe prior.
Yes.
If anyone didn't catch it, a number of the players that are in the transfer portal for them did end up playing in the game, similar to Syracuse. There was a couple of names that were still suited up that are in the portal. For Syracuse, there were a couple of names that we thought were going to play that were scratches for injuries.
That was unfortunate. By the way, we get this clearly. We're probably not going to talk about basketball that much because I don't think many people want to.
No, nobody wants to at this point. If you didn't see whatever debauchery happened in Brooklyn last week or last weekend, be happy.
I didn't. I lived around here. I literally walked around Barclays. I got coffee with a friend, and a bunch of Syracuse people walked into the coffee shop that I was at, and we both looked at each other because we both went to Syracuse together and went like, "Oh yeah, they play. It's not going to end well, is it? Nope. All right, on with your day."
Moving on.
And much like this past weekend when Syracuse played Bucknell, we would like to forget that things in that game happened as well.
I mean, that game at least ended in the right direction. However, sure. Syracuse basketball. We're living in bizarre world, folks. We're a football school now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also on the other side of the discussion where I think maybe who knows, but in previous years, previous regimes, if Syracuse was in this position they were right now, football wise, maybe it's their quarterback who decides to not play in the second half of the bowl game. But in Syracuse's case this year, the quarterback does play the entire bowl game.
Yeah, this was a weird bowl season to kind of parse. Pop-Tarts joy aside, I think I found myself watching less bowl games this year than I have in any other year. And not because the bowls matter less, but also because there's just so much more on, between the Premier League, between the NFL, stretching out all the games. What used to be a very dominated college football season really wasn't. And I think that there were a lot of people, myself included, who wanted Syracuse to play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. I'm not taking that away. I still think that would be a great experience for Syracuse. But being the only Fox bowl game and getting the entire week of promos, basically anytime you were watching Fox Sports leading up to it, they were promoting the heck out of Syracuse, Washington in the Holiday Bowl. Mm-hmm. And it really was kind of on an island during the time slot that it was on. And I feel like, and again, this is just maybe me being in weird online, post-Twitter world, it felt like everybody was watching Syracuse, Washington State. And for the first time this season, it felt like we didn't completely embarrass ourselves in some way on a nationally televised game.
Well, it looked like it was going to go that way, through the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, that was. I'm still confused what happened during that initial rush, but we righted the ship pretty good.
What happened was the Syracuse that appeared against Pitt nearly showed up again.
I mean, it's funny if you look at the line score. First quarter, Washington State 21, Syracuse 14. Second quarter, Syracuse 21, Washington State 0. Very just chaotic first half, which is all that I watched live. I watched the second half after the fact. This was a game. I think we had kind of talked about it earlier in the season. We knew that the defensive line didn't have a ton of depth. There was a lot of bodies, but was there depth? And as the season went on, we figured out that the answer to this question was not as much depth as we would like. And then to Christian's point that he mentioned earlier, one of the players that just magically did not play in this game was Fadil Diggs, who was not with the team. That was a fun surprise. Diggs,
he was with the team. He just wasn't on the field.
Yeah, he was in sweats.
So Diggs not playing in the game really kind of highlighted how thin that front is. And I feel like the first quarter was Washington State saying like, oh yeah, we can kind of punch you in the mouth. And they did.
Well, they did. And at the same time, it was kind of a great moment for those other defensive ends, Jaquez in particular, that decided to make their presence known after that fact. I think the first couple of series were like okay, what's going on out here? And to be fair, all year, that has kind of been what has happened to Elijah Robinson's defenses. Have been the first couple of series have been like, all right, let's feel it out, and then let's make the right adjustments, which he seems to always do. Pitt notwithstanding, because that game is stupid. And they turned it right around and were able to put a solid product on the field for the rest of the game. Like after that initial spurt, what was it, 14 points beyond that? Sure, I'll take that for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and with 7, it was 14 coming in, essentially garbage time in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the play-by-play here on ESPN, it's punt, it's Syracuse punt, Cougs touchdown, Orange touchdown, Cougs punt, Orange touchdown, Cougs touchdown, Syracuse blocked touchdown for the Cougs, Syracuse touchdown, Cougs interception, Syracuse touchdown, down, loss of play on downs, Syracuse touchdown, end of half. Like it I don't know what else you could ask for out of a bowl game. Like it was action all the way. It was just for a bit here, a lot of the bad things that Syracuse did this season kind of reared its head. The slow starts on defense, the inability to really do zone coverage correctly, the lack of bodies in the backfield in any way, shape, or form, and inexplicable, terrible special teams execution was all there in the first half.
What special teams?
Now to be fair,
straight out of my brain, Jesus.
To be fair, after the block punt, Syracuse didn't punt again.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, would you? Yeah. No. It was a microcosm of the entire Syracuse season and ended fittingly for the rest of the season. Like Kyle McCord put on a show around against and looked like he was amazing because he is. LaQuinn Allen just decides to own all bowl games at all times. Like the Jackson Meeks made 4 or 5 back shoulder catches that you're just like, really? What are you doing? Like
he was ready for the Patriots to take Gadsden number 1 when they inevitably get the number 1 pick in the draft and don't trade it away for
no.
team that needs a quarterback.
That's only if Bill Belichick was still there.
Okay, my bad. Yes. Mm-hmm.
But Bill Belichick is trying to figure out how he can draft Oronde Gadsden to UNC.
Yes, indeed. But unfortunately, Gadsden is seemingly very much so headed to the NFL right now.
Yeah, and deservedly so. I actually, in the Discord, if anyone's out there listening and feels like having a rousing time during Syracuse sporting events, feel free to join our Discord. Link is usually on the Noon's Magician article, post, whatever you want to call it, that has the link to this in it. But in the Discord, I was literally saying after the first touchdown, someone's like, well, that might be his last touchdown in Orange. I'm like, nah, the way the ball's going, or the way the ball's moving, he's going to have another one. lo and behold, 2 touchdowns. What was it, like 80 something yards, 70 something yards?
70 something yards. Yeah.
And just always in the right spot at the right time, because there is no one that large that should be able to find a seam in zone coverage like he can.
Because again, it goes to show why teams had to, not just choose to, teams had to double Gadsden this season. Because if you put him one-on-one in man coverage, 9 times out of 10, he's beating the guy that's either a safety or linebacker that's on him, because he's too fast and too tall for a said guy. And if he play him in zone coverage and not double him, he's going to find a soft spot in the zone. And when you have a quarterback who is as good at reading coverage as McCord is, he's going to hit that soft spot in the zone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how that works out when you have multiple talented players on the field that they do good things.
I mean, I do think that one of the interesting things, I kind of dug into this with Dan, former host of the show, friend of the program, Dan Lyons on Blue Sky. Is Jeff Nixon the best offensive coordinator that Syracuse has had in the post-2000 era?
George McDonald.
I'm
joking.
I see Steve. I see Steve trying to answer this, doing the same thing that Dan and I were working through, which was, oh shit, the answer might be yes.
Oh no, the answer is definitely yes. I'm trying to go farther back because as much as Fran loves George DeLeon, I believe Jeff Nixon could probably call a better game than he could.
11:45. Steve is old.
Noted. But yeah, like as far as you go back, that is, DeLeon's probably your next one in the discussion, but he wasn't calling as dynamic a game as what Nixon's been doing. There was a point, especially towards the end of the era, where it was referred to as the DeLeon run, pass, punt offense. Like we haven't had a dynamic offensive coordinator at Syracuse in a long time, and that's as far back as I can remember because that's as old as I am.
Now here's an interesting query for both of you. The very first touchdown, the 2-point conversion that unfortunately fails because Jackson Kennedy just steps out just a little bit too early. Who's the person that came up with that play? Was it James Villano or was it Jeff Nixon?
That's a
poor Danolo's ghost.
So one of the two had a stupid idea, and the other was like, "Yeah, let's roll with
it." It was. I honestly kind of liked the play because they clearly
100%.
saw something. And
I liked the play as soon as it didn't immediately fail. That's what I liked the play because. Too many times we've seen that formation and the play immediately fails 0.02 seconds after the whistle or after the snap happens.
Yeah. That's
They read something in the way that Washington State was covering, or they saw something in film of like the way the Washington lines up on special teams, where they knew they were going to have space to be able to run to the edge there. Obviously, execution leaves a little bit to be desired here, but I liked the play call and I liked it. But I think that this kind of goes to the Nixon, why he's so good, is that like you watch him call a game, and this is something Christian was calling out as early as week 2. Like he just understands that modern football needs to be more pass heavy, but not to the like, oh, we need to throw the ball down the field every time. The goal should be to get 4 to 7 yards per play over a game. And that's how you keep the chains moving. That's how you keep the ball moving. That's how you make sure that you are dictating the flow of this game. And he seems to do a great job of being able to dial up runs when the defense is expecting pass, be able to take those deep shots over the middle with the ronde when needed, hitting Meeks on those back shoulders. Again, shout out to Daryl Gill, sophomore here, who balled out again, had another random Daryl Gill game. I feel a lot better about the offense moving forward with him out wide next season. He got him involved early and often. It was just one of these, it was just another really nicely called game that Kyle McCord executed on at the highest level. The offensive line did a great job. The skill positions did great. We've had more of these great offensive games holistically than I can remember ever in a season, because my frame of reference for this was, well, Sean Lewis's offense with Eric Dungy was a sight to behold, but so often that was Eric Dungy going Leroy Jenkins on everybody. And as much as that is fun to watch, that's not necessarily a feature as much as it is a bug.
So two things. One, Gil is really funnily, and I don't think this will happen too much, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but he's really funnily inserting himself into the Damian Alford camp of being able to make a catch under 20 yards.
I was just about to say, like, he's the new Damian Alford, not in the he's going to drop things way, but in the he's going to only catch balls that are, well beyond the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and to Andy's point, how many times when you watch the offense, maybe not so much under Dungy, but especially the past 5 years when it was under DeVito and under Schrader, did you see Syracuse in so many third and long situations? Whereas in the Jeff Nixon offense, there were so many more third and manageable situations where not only is the pressure not as hard for the quarterback and the offense to obviously get the first down, but it also gives Fran the flexibility, if he wants to go for it on fourth down, because more often than not, you're in a position where you can go for it on fourth down because it's a manageable fourth down to go for it as well. Now, we didn't see too many of those in this bowl game, but this season, that's what's allowed the opportunity for Fran to, keep moving the ball down the field as well, because every single play, and this is what we've seen opposing defenses do against Syracuse as well, it's death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
And it's how opposing defenses tired out. It's how opposing offenses tired out Syracuse's defenses for the past 5 years. And now it's really refreshing to see Syracuse do that to opposing defenses.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain watching that instead of vice versa. It's been too long for us to continually watch.
Literally and figuratively. Because what's one of the other things that makes the Jeff Nixon offense so appealing for Syracuse fans? It's time of possession. Yeah. And yes, there were a couple in the bowl game of, quick hitters, 2 plays in the end zone, bam, hello. Most of the drives and the scoring drives this year for Syracuse football were those death by 1,000 cuts, double-digit plays, taking over 7 minutes off the clock. And it were those drives that, helped set the tempo for Syracuse. It wasn't, the orange is the new fast style that Syracuse fans grew accustomed to under Dino Babers. It was we're going to methodically take out 3 or 4 yards every single play, and that's going to keep moving the chains down the field. And whoop, all of a sudden, you're in the red zone, and people are like, wait a minute, how did they get here? They were at the 25, not 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
That's the balance that he's kind of brought to the equation is it's a very different feel to it than anything we've seen in a while.
Yeah. And I haven't looked at I think one of the things I'm going to try to do this offseason is really kind of dive into the different offensive splits that we have here. Holistically, you can see the run pass options, but the way he calls a game in the Syracuse half of the field versus the opponent's half of the field, where the throws are going when he's calling throws, I think all those things are going to be really interesting and telling, because beyond it, in all fairness, I think we can take a objective step back here and say that this is probably one of the most talented Syracuse offenses to ever step foot on campus. You don't set the conference passing record without having weapons to throw the ball to, and without having a quarterback who's able to execute at that high of a level. So it's not like Nixon was turning, water into wine here. He had a lot of things to play with. He just used them incredibly intelligently and incredibly effectively. And I do kind of want to talk about the fact that Kyle McCord is the ACC's all-time single-season passing leader. That to me is something that if you had told me was going to happen 8 months ago, I would have belly laughed in your face.
We would have all said, "Go home, you're drunk."
Yes, and I cannot believe that it is something that is true here.
He's got. I remember seeing this somewhere, but I've got to look it up. This is something that's worth looking up as well, because right now he's 26th. He's tied with Gardner Minshew for a single season all-time in FBS for passing records, and that's 26th. And somewhere there was a tweet somewhere that said it'd been interesting to see where that ranks among non-Mike Leach air raid offenses, because you would assume that the majority of the quarterbacks who are up there in the FBS all-time rankings are Mike Leach air raid offenses, and because 26th, you think about all the quarterbacks that have played Division I FBS football. It's not a bad place to be in the rankings in terms of all-time single-season records for Kyle McCord.
It's kind of completely insane to think about.
Exactly. And let's also remember the
Titans.
a lot of people that a lot of people at the beginning when McCord initially committed to Syracuse, a lot of people were excited, but there were definitely a number of people who were, cautious about McCord.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, just mainly because and I think for a lot of people it was a change for Syracuse also, since once the last time you really saw a great pocket passer for Syracuse was Nassib, and to my in my knowledge, it was also DeVito, but DeVito didn't have the offensive line to back that up.
Right.
Because another one of I did want to bring this up earlier, but this also kind of ties in with McCord as well. Because one of the big reasons why this Syracuse season was a success is you got to go back to looking at why 2018 was a success also. People stayed healthy. You got to give a lot of credit to the strength and conditioning staff to not only get people healthy, but to have people stay healthy. Syracuse didn't have Rondé Gadsden and Trevor Pena for the majority of last season. The entire offensive line stayed healthy, so much so that they could experiment with the offensive line to change it up, not just for health reasons, but for quality reasons.
Right. Changing it because they wanted to, not because they had to, is a very, very different feeling.
Exactly. And because of that, how much that does to a quarterback's psyche and mentality to know that he can rely on the same guys week in and week out to not only protect him, but also to throw to. And we've talked about this so many times, the versatility of Syracuse receivers. The only person that really went down in the receiver room that was high profile was Ed Haynes, and that wasn't an injury issue. So you've got McCord, who built just such a comfortable rapport. You could tell it immediately with all of his receivers that it made it easy for him. And so many people have said the fit. Like, the fit for McCord was perfect for Syracuse. And this game was essentially just a culmination of that. Because of, again, just think about all the records that McCord set. The single season, the passing record, not just for Syracuse, but for the ACC. It's the ACC record for most completions in a season as well. It's a second 400-yard passing game for McCord this season. Multiple bowl records, record for Syracuse passing yards and touchdowns in a bowl game for McCord. That's everything you could have asked for.
That's stupid. That's just downright stupid.
I mean this very seriously. I remember the last time Syracuse had a season like this, 2018. I drove to Syracuse from Erie. I got tickets to the bowl game for Christmas. I had to fly. I flew my way down from New York, but I was picking up a friend in Syracuse whose in-laws lived in the city. Friend of the show, Evan Weston, was staying with his in-laws there. And as I picked him up from his in-laws, and he brings in the paper into the car. And I'm like, why'd you do this? And he's like, I want to show you the best print journalism that I have ever seen. And it was the front page of the sports section. And it had the full page, top 5 Syracuse quarterbacks of all time. and it had number 1, McPherson, number 2, McNabb, 3, Dungy, 4, Graves, 5, Nassib. And we were just talking about how putting Dungy above Nassib and Graves is just like pure catering to like that moment in time. And just the level of like understanding how to get people to buy this paper and to like start the like great job, Syracuse. Post standard RIP.
Yeah.
Like just great things there.
Well,
and
now I mean, most it's still up and running.
It's still up and running, but not
shout out to our friends Chris Carlson and Brent Axe.
Yeah, I know. Syracuse.com, I guess, is what they would want to go by now, which is just a very odd thing. But this is just me. This is me showing my relative age, where it was like
they
calling them
print it a couple times a week.
There we go. Okay.
My father-in-law definitely still reads the Sunday paper. And I know this because I have his login for Syracuse.com.
Andy tries to kill the print newspaper industry a few years earlier than he needs to. But where I was going with all this is that we started talking again, and we were like, what is that version of the paper today? And where is Kyle McCord on that list? Because I am ready to put Kyle McCord at number 3 after just one season, in terms of the greatest Syracuse quarterbacks ever. And I don't think it's that hot of a take to do so.
Absolutely not.
No, I mean, I've watched 4 of those 5 quarterbacks. And
Steve is old.
Yes. McPherson is the only one I technically did not see. I don't remember much of Graves. McNabb was kind of where I cut my teeth. But if you're talking a pure quarterback, there has not been a better one at Syracuse. If you're talking overall longevity, whatnot, impact at Syracuse, then the equation like that list comes back into play. But like, this was easily the most impressive quarterback season we have seen from anyone wearing a Syracuse uniform. Which
again is stupid. Like, this is ridiculously stupid to be saying.
It is
a first year offensive coordinator, first year coaching staff, transfer in with 1 year to go, number 1 weapon recovering from Lisfranc surgery, number 2 weapon recovering from still to this day unidentified year-long absence, injury, something. Number 3 weapon, unproven transfer with 17 previous receptions at his last stop. Like, this offense was
number 3 weapon coming into the season as the number 4 weapon, because the other number 1 weapon was a redshirt freshman at previous school with previous head coach.
Then Justice Ross Simmons was in there somewhere in the equation that was probably supposed to be higher than he ended up due to injury. You have an offensive line that the interior core was duct tape and Band-Aids from last year, and 2 transfer tackles that ended up this season not both starting and not both playing every game. Like, what happened? Like, how did this team work?
Remember, one of those tackles came in to the season initially playing right tackle, but then when the other tackle transferred in this spring, flipped over to the left side and knocked out what was supposed to be, for most people's knowledge, a penned-in tackle.
Yeah. This whole season is a giant question mark, and we somehow ended up with a 10-win season out of it and beat how many ranked teams during the course of the year?
I believe it was 3 ranked teams,
right?
Something like that. It was 8 bowl eligible teams, which was tied with Texas for the most wins against bowl eligible teams in the regular season.
Right. Going into the season, looking at this schedule, we didn't think we were going to play 8 bowl eligible teams. Like, we thought this was going to be the cakewalk season, and we ended up.
This was a soft schedule that became incredibly difficult very quickly. Which, again, we are 1 game away from, like, again, it's just funny to think about, but we were a certain game away from potentially facing 2 playoff opponents with UNLV and Miami.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And winning both.
Yeah. I was going to say, we're 1 pass away from being in that equation ourselves. You stop that Stanford pass and still the rest of the season plays out like it does, then this is a very, very different team, and we're still talking about them playing. Like, it's crazy.
I mean, you Stanford and BC 8 points between
Yeah.
two games there. Like, again, the Pitt game is the only one that I'm willing to say, like, look, we had no right to win that game in any way, shape, or form. The team that showed up that day did not deserve to win. But again, like, it feels like 2018 again. We're going to get into this in the back half of the show, but like 2018, very similar vibes where it was, oh, hey, Syracuse is only 9 points away from playing for the ACC championship game and maybe getting themselves into the playoff. Similar vibes here. And we all know what happened after that. And again, like, not trying to like bury the good vibes here so early, but like, I think the most pressing question that I have gotten from Syracuse fans is what's next? Like, where does this program go? Because it's in a very different spot than it was in 2018 when this happened last time. And we weren't scrambling to extend our coach because we were afraid USC was going to offer him, even though that was never really on the table. Right. We were not living in a world where our head coach was leading ESPN and social media because he's a complete whack job in the best ways possible, but is a complete whack job. I do think that this is going to be a very interesting offseason, and we're going to get into all those things, but it's just weird to sit here with the two of you specifically, because Christian said that this team was going to be lucky to win 6 games. I said that this team's ceiling was 7 wins. Steve was the optimist here who was like, yeah, 7 to 8 wins feels appropriate here. And now we're sitting here talking about a team that marked the modern day win total record for Syracuse.
Yeah, I mean, not even modern. Yeah, I mean, that is hell. What was 87? Like
87 was 11-1.
11 wins. This is the most wins since then. What the hell? Yeah, let's dive into that a little more in the back half, because I think we do have not necessarily some superlatives for 24 to 25, but definitely some discussion on where this team is going in 25 and why it might be different than 2018 into 2019. It's something that doesn't change ever.
The thing that's on your hat.
The quality that you can find at Home Field Apparel. As you can see, Andy and I are both wearing... Go for it. Hit the
They
spiel.
make the comfy t-shirts, hats, hoodies. We all hope that you got some Home Field in your stocking this Christmas season. But if you didn't, and you're feeling left out, and you just want to get in on that Home Field action, whether your team is in the playoff, whether your team is in a bowl, whether your team is celebrating a bowl win, you can with Home Field and promo code NUNES24, NUNES24, for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. That's NUNES24 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Makers of the best everything. My wardrobe is now, like, I had to do a work trip to London, and I realized that 75% of what I brought was Home Field. Just like the core collection, like, I just wear those sweaters or those plain t-shirts underneath stuff. All what I wore was Home Field to the office. Also Home Field. If you get into the knit button down game, like the shacket thing, those shirt jacket button downs with if Home Field starts doing that, like, that's it. I'm done. My entire wardrobe will be Home Field.
I hate that the shacket has become a thing that's ubiquitous, because I've been rocking shackets since like 1990 in my wardrobe, and now it's the trendy thing, and I'm like, what? But okay, I guess I'm with it.
Well, to peek behind the curtain for everybody here, when the corduroy hat drop happened, everybody here was like, that might be a little bit too young and trendy for us. And Steve pops out and he's like, I've been rocking these since the 90s. What are you all talking about? So anyway, Steve's style is becoming the new trendy style.
Hey, I lived through the beard thing. I've had a beard since I was like 16. And then it became the thing to do, to grow out these lumberjack beards. And I'm like, here I am. You know what else?
Steve the influencer.
Oh, 100%. You know what else is trendy? Syracuse football. Right now,
there we go.
I feel like this is easily the highest people have been on this program in decades. We're living in a complete bizarro world.
I want to start off this back half segment with something that Steve and I briefly touched on, but now is getting more and more steam. And we need to get Andy's opinion on this. Because you mentioned, Andy, there were some questions about, Syracuse in 2025 on the football field. You're not worrying too much about, obviously, if your coach is going to bowl for USC. You've got some definitive answers on returning and not returning players, and then you have McCord, which we didn't think was going to be a decision, but all of a sudden may or may not be a decision.
I'll say this. I've done some digging. I've asked some questions around people who know this process better, and the answer is anybody who says they know what's happening right now is lying to you, because it's the NCAA. It sounds like this is up into the NCAA's hands. It sounds like what will happen is at the end of January, early February, the NCAA basically releases a blanket of yes, no. Are these players eligible, and McCord will be part of that group. I think there's two ways to look at this. The first way is that Kyle McCord is not going to be a successful NFL quarterback. And I don't feel like a dick for saying that, because the reasons that he left Ohio State are the reasons I can say that statement. He's not mobile enough. He clearly is lacking some arm strength and some accuracy, consistency that you just need to have at the next level with the way that offenses are run and the way that defenses play. He can probably be a very good scout team, practice squad, backup quarterback if he wants to be. But now that NIL is a thing, he can probably make more playing college football than he can being a backup in the NFL. And it doesn't, and what?
No, I was going to say, to be fair, like, if he's going to be a backup in the NFL, he can do that next year. Like, exactly. It's not going to change. Like, there's no new shiny that he needs to hit the draft immediately for if he's going to make bank staying here. Like,
exactly. And in this new world, I understand fighting for it and basically saying, like, look, here is a player that was brought up in one system and was raised and developed with one expectation. The landscape has fundamentally shifted. He's trying to get an extra year in this new system that clearly benefits him in a way that he cares about. And I would love to see Syracuse be the beneficiaries of an NCAA decision for once. On the other hand, I can't really see a logical argument here for this other than, hey, redshirt rules are silly and dumb. Which they have been for a while, but I don't know if the NCAA wants to use Kyle McCord to blow up the redshirt rule in any way, shape, or form. And on the other side of it, next, not to play the schedule game too early, because clearly we just talked about how playing the schedule game too early means nothing. Next year's schedule is an absolute behemoth of a schedule, and having Kyle McCord makes it far more likely that Syracuse does better. But I almost think that, like, looking at this roster is going to probably be a lot younger next year with a few exceptions. I don't think it's the worst idea to have the team take a step back and say, like, look, Fran has now spent 2 full transfer and high school recruiting cycles elevating the talent potential of this program. Let's figure out which of these young kids can actually do it, and which of these young kids need to be cycled out in favor of the next wave of younger players or the next wave of Kyle McCords that come in 2026. If only because there are so many fringe 4-star guys that have come in. There are so many of these athletic freaks that have now been in the weight room for a year or two. And I kind of want to see what they have in them. And it feels like next year might just be a good year to kind of throw the youth out there, get their trial by fire, and see what happens. So I have a very two conflicted minds of this Kyle McCord decision here, because I can see it benefiting Syracuse both ways, and I can understand Fran wanting to have his cake and eat it too.
Do you guys want to play a very dangerous game right now?
Sure, why not?
If you're watching on a live stream, this is the 2026 Syracuse football schedule.
This is why we can't have nice things, folks.
I'm not gonna lie here. I don't hate that schedule right now. I don't. Again, it's what is it? We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We're missing a non-conference game with a FBS opponent because we've already got New Hampshire on there. I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. I feel like that's a good conference schedule.
Greg's, it's the Army game that's no longer existent.
Yes.
So your home games on this schedule are New Hampshire, FCS, Cal, Clemson, Louisville, and SMU. And your away games are at UConn, BC, at the Keenan Memorial Stadium, home of the hoodie North Carolina Tar Heels, at Pitt, at Virginia, at Notre Dame.
It's not easy. No schedule is.
No, but that's Give me, if you wanted me to construct a middle of the road schedule for Syracuse based on the ACC schedule, that seems like, compared to what we're seeing in 2025, a reasonable look.
Yeah, Christian's got 2025 up now, and this is why, like, starting the year with Tennessee on a Memorial Day weekend game sounds great. I will be there. I will be enjoying the hell out of that. I probably won't enjoy the game itself.
No. Labor Day, by the way.
Yeah,
Labor Day.
He said Memorial Day weekend. I'm like, wait, when did the college football season start on May 27th?
When did Tennessee
give it a few years? Yeah, this one hurts because what are the odds that Notre Dame game is played at Notre Dame Stadium? Because I am thinking that game gets moved to New York, either at MetLife or at the Yankee Stadium, depending on the date announced. I really don't like that we have to go to Dallas, to Miami, to Death Valley. Like,
and
you know, two of those games are going to be back to back. You know it.
Yeah.
And to Atlanta twice.
And to Atlanta. Oh, yeah. Georgia Tech, Atlanta again. Who's now good, apparently.
Apparently.
But on the plus side, Syracuse gets to host Bill Belichick.
Again, maybe. I'll believe it when I see it. that contract out, I still think is
that is
there
very
for
true.
a reason.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, the schedule sucks.
Oh, it does. That at Notre Dame game, for some reason in my brain, I'm like, depending on what date that ends up, do I make that trip just to make that trip? Yeah.
I mean, I was going to do it the last time, and then they moved it to Yankee Stadium, so I made that trip, all the way up the 4 train. But
I mean, again, me being me, if that trip's in a New York metro area facility, I will be there no matter what.
It's just like one of these things where, again, like, we'll need to kind of see how it's laid out, because there's a world here where Syracuse gets a bye, like multiple buys in between these big games, and that helps things, and you're able to chunk this season up.
Does it though?
But I said there's a world. There's a world. There's not a guarantee, but there's a world where that happens. Maybe it's 1 of 5 million, but there's a world where this schedule can work out okay. We just know that the ACC just rarely does Syracuse football any favors.
Sounds right.
So with that schedule in mind, like, I guess I'll switch it over to you, Steve, here. Like, having Kyle McCord for that schedule would make me far more optimistic than I am right now with LSU backup quarterback, and maybe some freshmen fighting in the quarterback competition, whoever's the winner of that, for next year.
Well, that's the thing, though. If we have McCord, it also gives a year for Ricky Collins and for Jakari Williams to grow a little bit more. I'm curious what Michael Johnson does in that situation, whether he remains as a quarterback or moves to some other position to see the field. there's a lot of weird things happening that could hinge on. And who the hell knows if Fran goes out and finds another quarterback in the portal, and then it's like, all right, well, what happens then? You know, who knows if whoever Fran wants isn't even in the portal yet.
Yeah, again, my inability to know a calendar, jokes aside, it does feel like because of the extended reach of the playoff, we might not know our quarterback until Memorial Day, because it might be somebody who's currently on a playoff team, and the playoff teams get a 10-day window once they're eliminated.
I believe it's 5.
5. Sorry, I keep saying 10 in my brain, but it's 5. It's a 5-day window once they're eliminated to do their transfers and do their movements. A lot could happen. We still don't know exactly what's going to happen. And you know, this is the age-old adage that Steve and I really started just hammering home. We don't know anything about this team until the spring game. Like, and even then, we probably don't know a whole lot, but it seems like Fran's willing to show a little bit more than the past generations will. But we really won't know a whole lot about this team until after spring ball is concluded and spring game takes place, and we see who's left on this roster after that point.
It's insane. It's insane that it's the 29th of December and we're this optimistic about Syracuse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If this were a different regime and we did not have this season, imagine this conversation today looking at next year's schedule.
Think about it. 12 months ago, we were still talking about hibachis.
Point. Very good point.
Well, not to I'm going to be the wet blanket here with the numbers. This was not the best Syracuse team of the last 10, 15 years when you look at the advanced stats. FPI had Syracuse at 49th. SP Plus had Syracuse at 46th. The last Doug Marrone team that won a share of the Big East title, I believe, finished in the low 20s. The Dino Babers 2018 team finished in the mid 30s. This statistically was not the best Syracuse team we've ever seen. They were a very lucky team. If you go by Bill C's post-game win expectancy, they should have won roughly about 6.5 games, and we obviously overachieved that. But as people around college football will tell you, luck is often just who has the more talented, most important position players on the field.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the Kyle McCord thing. Like, it turns out that when you have Kyle McCord at your quarterback, you're never really out of a game. And there were multiple games this season where, hey, we've seen this go foobar multiple times. And Kyle McCord was the one who makes the deep throw to Arande or makes the clutch third down conversion. And we saw LaQuinn Allen, punch it in extra effort multiple times. Like, this team just had enough skill to kind of overcome those close game luck swings that typically go against Syracuse when they didn't have those high impact players.
Right. That UNLV touchdown is this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Allen literally just being like, no, I'm getting in the goddamn end zone. That was it. Like, it really, it may not have been the statistically most impressive season,
except for the quarterback.
Right. But I'll go out on a limb and say I can't remember post McNabb a season that was remotely as exciting to watch or that has the look test as much. Like, I love, the St. Doug and that team were great, but it wasn't a happy, upbeat, pretty football to watch. It was what it was like. Nassib could throw the ball, but like, even then it felt like a very methodical game. Like, this was just fun. This was a lot of fun. I don't know if there's a better way to describe it.
And it goes back to having McCord and Jeff Nixon at the helm of this offense. Because what it turned out was, putting a pro-style system in a college world where the drive is to very much clearly be a high-powered offense to really rack up the yards is what worked for Syracuse. And, having a quarterback who could execute that vision is what helped Syracuse, especially optically, just feel like a team that was fun and exciting to watch.
Mind you, that's another thing that we thought, go home, you're drunk, when we realized that Nixon was going to try and institute a pro-style offense at Syracuse with what we had. We thought there wasn't going to be a chance of that working, and here we are. It worked.
It is one of, I think, the best Syracuse stories of my lifetime. The fact that all of this worked to the extent that it did. The fact that it's continuing to work as judged by Fran Brown's recruiting class and the players that he brought in, and that he's continually going after. This is not a fluke. And I think that's the part of this that why I'm so optimistic. There's enough trench work here to make me feel confident that this is actually sustainable. But I guess the biggest takeaway for me, and I'm kind of curious to your, both of your perspectives here. The biggest takeaway for me about this season that would have been a concern in the past, but is not right now. I would have been very worried, much like in 2018. We saw a bit of a Dino Babers brain drain where Sean Lewis left. We saw a lot of back office staff leave, and Dino's inability to backfill properly and his inability to hire the right people and his reluctance to get rid of people that weren't working, cough, cough, Brian Ward, that really kind of dragged the program back to where Dino had lifted it up. And I think that with Fran, between what we saw on signing day with, the GM and all the different scouts that were given the microphone, with the way that he's talked about the staff with Robinson and Nixon and his network, I feel fairly confident Nixon and Robinson will not be on this staff in 2026 or by 2026. I think that they'll probably be on the staff in 2025, but by 2026, they're probably going to be gone.
Well, we know Nixon will because his daughter just signed with Syracuse. So,
yeah, I feel like this Fran is going to be able to keep this ship rolling because he's got the right guys. And whether it's because he's built up a Rolodex of black assistant coaches who haven't gotten a real shot yet, or whether it's just Fran's really good at this. It's a combination of one, both, or some third element that I'm not factoring in.
As always,
I feel very
porque no los dos.
Yeah. I feel so confident that this momentum is not going to get stalled out because of what stalled out the last time.
Yeah, this was something that Steve and I brought up again in the last podcast. It's we're kind of seeing this in a similar way in basketball as well, because this was an article that Kevin had brought up a couple of weeks ago, where you had the great football season in 2018, you had the great basketball, maybe not so much a great basketball season in 2021, but you had the Sweet 16 run, and both staffs didn't show an ability to ride that momentum and keep the momentum pointing in the right way for Syracuse. And so for football, it required a drastic coaching change. Basketball, we haven't seen that yet because while Boeheim retired, changing over to Autry isn't not necessarily drastic in terms of Syracuse thinking. And,
the guy who's been here since the 90s isn't drastically
exactly
changing things? Really?
Exactly. So what you have now is, you got to give. I don't think a lot of Syracuse fans do this, but in this situation, you got to give a lot of credit to John Wildhack, who turned out, there were certain criteria he was looking for that was very clear, and he was actually willing to go past certain benchmarks, because it was one of the things that Wildhack had made clear is that he was looking for someone who either had something like NFL or head coaching experience in the college ranks, or an offensive or defensive coordinator. But one of the other things he was looking for was someone with strong ties to the Northeast region. And so he was willing to accept Fran's ties with the Northeast region, his recruiting, and sacrifice his lack of head coaching and coordinator experience to bring him to Syracuse. And because of that, it turned out that making that sacrifice to not have that prerequisite of previous high-level coaching experience as a coordinator, as a head coach, paid off in the end for Syracuse.
Insane that we're having this conversation.
And
also that like you said, that Wildhack had that foresight, which I don't think, I'll go out on a limb and say I don't believe any of us would have thought that he would have that based on prior, hires and experience and what we had seen.
Let's remember, we didn't even mention the name Fran Brown until Cinco leaked it.
What was it? 2 days before he signed, and all
it was like it was the day before.
Yeah,
it was in the morning, and we're like, wait a second.
I believe, because I remember that podcast because it was a couple days before the pod, right?
Yeah,
and we were like going from who the hell is this guy to, oh, I kind of like this guy, to, oh, I'm all in, over the course of like 3 days in the Slack. It was like this whole epiphany of, wow, where'd he come? Okay, we're in. Like, this is perfect. And I guess it worked out. Seems to have. He has by the way, the current ranking for the 2025 class is 37th. I don't know when our last top 40 class was, but
never.
He did it in his first season. So here we are.
Forget top 40. When was the last top 50 class at Syracuse?
Probably 2019. I don't know. I off the top of my head, I have no clue, but it has, beyond that, it must have been a while.
Again, Fran is just doing things here that we have never seen done here, and it is both remarkable and uplifting. And I'm a little nervous because usually when things get this good, they come immediately crashing down. But for now, I'm going to ride the wave and enjoy it, and enjoy that we all want to talk about Syracuse football here on December 29th and not talk about one of the other programs that is currently playing that I may or may not have just not watched at all.
Yeah, I don't think we want to talk about Syracuse basketball, so let's not.
No, for the record, 2019 was the 47th class in the country. Prior to that, I believe it was a good long while.
Exactly.
So,
Fran, first two recruiting classes in the top 45. Usually Syracuse is floating around the mid-50s.
I guess this is why you hire a recruiter as your head coach.
Turns out it can work pretty well for you.
Yeah. Lo and behold, things do work out when you hire the right people. I believe we should find a way to do whatever we can to keep Fran Brown here as long as we can. How feasible that is, I don't know. And like we said going into the season, I think all of us were like, all right, if this works out, it's gravy.
If the Yankees are any indication, do not make him pay for a suite. I'm saying this as the salty Yankees fan.
Hi.
There's two of you here that are salty, and that makes it so much fun.
Hi, table. EPL.
Oh, well,
I can do that this year. I can call table on you guys because.
Well, wait until Tuesday or no Wednesday. That's when Arsenal plays.
Sorry, Andy, you guys jumped us.
Yeah, well, we're both looking up at Nottingham Forest, which is a thing.
Still weird. What?
Notice how I've stayed silent during this conversation.
You should.
You're in the table.
Yeah. We're in the place that Crystal Palace is usually.
Crystal Palace is technically one behind you.
God, I hate it so much.
Not going to tell you how much I'm rooting against Man United tomorrow because of a potential pool that I could win. So we're just not going to continue to roll in your misery here.
Mm-hmm.
What we are going to do
Oh,
is begin the process of me asking. I think we covered everything here. And remind everybody that we are still going to do this, even though there are no more football games that Syracuse will be playing. We are going to continue to do season recaps. We are going to do some trivia. We are going to have a lot of fun on this podcast, even if the basketball teams are not having a good time, and stall until we get to lacrosse season, when we hopefully have a better time, but jury's out there. And if not, like, look, there's still signing days. There's still football things to talk about. We're going to continue to do this and have a great time, even though the Syracuse regular season for 2024 has come to a close. And I believe this is the third full season that we've had the three of us here together, which is kind of wild. Time really is a flat circle and spins through here. So for those of you who are listening, who have been here with us for those full 3 seasons, we really appreciate it. For those of you who have been here longer, when it was either just me and Steve or when it was just Dan and John, we appreciate the continued patronage and the support as this show has morphed and changed. This year was probably the most transformative of the show, just due to everything that was happening behind the scenes. And we got here, we got to the end of it. I am eternally grateful for the show. I think everybody who's on this is as well. And I just wanted to make sure that we thank you all, because it was a great time this year. We've been doing the show when it's not so good of a time, and we appreciate you for sticking with us through it all.
yeah, this is the happiest we've ever been doing the show.
How horrific is that?
Dan and John got the fun years.
We get one back.
At least Dan and Sean could turn off their cameras. You know,
True.
we do this when webcams on, so you can see our misery as we talk about it.
Yeah.
But on that note, thank you all for a fantastic 2024. Thank you to everybody who's listening. Thank you to everybody who stuck with us for this edition of the Disloyal Idiots, a Syracuse Orange podcast here on the Fans First Sports Network. We do this every Sunday-ish at 8 p.m.-ish on Twitch, YouTube, on X. If you want to be following any of those accounts, you can follow us over there and watch us live. Thank you to everybody who's listening to this on your podcast provider of choice. Make sure that you like and subscribe. It helps us trick the AI into expanding the Ottoman Empire. Thank you to everybody who's watching us on the sister site, newsmagician.com. We obviously appreciate the continued support from you over there, and appreciate the continued support of the written work that's taking place here and beyond over there as well. Thank you again to Home Field Apparel, our favorite sponsor of the show. Promo code NUNES24, NUNES24, for 15% off your first order at Home Field Apparel. Gentlemen, signing off for 2024 with a 10-3 record, a holiday bowl championship, a ton of eggnog, Pop-Tarts, and wishing you and everyone else out there a happy and healthy new year. Go mother effing Orange.
Go Orange.
Go Orange.